Hello, and welcome back to Speak English Daily.
Hi everyone, we are very happy to see you here today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Speak English Daily. I'm Anna, and today we're talking about something that affects all of us. It happens in school, at work, and very often when people try to speak English. The topic today is pressure, and more importantly, how to think clearly when you feel it.
Hi Anna, I'm really interested in this topic because pressure is something I experience a lot when I try to speak English. Sometimes I know the words, I understand the question, but when someone looks at me and waits for my answer, my mind suddenly feels empty.
That is a very common experience, Mike. Many English learners say the same thing. They study vocabulary and grammar, but when it is time to speak, their thoughts become slow or confused.
Yes, that happens to me. A few days ago, someone asked me a simple question in English. They said, "What do you do?" It is a basic question, but I felt nervous. I paused for a long moment before answering.
That moment you described is pressure. Your brain suddenly feels responsible to respond quickly and correctly. When that happens, the body also reacts. Your heart may beat faster, your breathing may change, and your mind may start moving very quickly.
I notice that. When someone asks me a question in English, I start thinking about grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation at the same time.
And that makes thinking harder. When your brain is busy worrying about mistakes, it becomes difficult to organize ideas. Instead of speaking naturally, you feel stuck.
That explains why I sometimes know the answer, but still struggle to say it.
Today, we will explore simple ways to stay calm and think clearly even when you feel pressure. The goal is not perfect English. The goal is clear communication.
I like that idea. If I can stay calm and express my ideas clearly, speaking English will feel much easier.
Let's talk more about what pressure feels like. Many people think pressure is only in the mind, but actually, the body also reacts. When you feel pressure, your body prepares for action. Your heart may beat faster, your breathing may change, and your mind may start moving very quickly.
I have definitely felt that. When someone asks me a question in English, I suddenly become very aware of everything. I start thinking about how I sound and whether my answer will be correct.
That awareness is very common. Your brain is trying to protect you from making mistakes, but sometimes that protection makes communication harder.
It feels like my brain is doing too many things at the same time.
That's a good way to describe it. Imagine your brain as a desk where you are working. When the desk is clean, you can find your papers and tools easily. But when the desk is full of many things, it becomes harder to focus.
So pressure makes the desk messy.
Yes, that is a simple way to think about it. When pressure appears, your brain fills with different thoughts. You may think, what if I make a mistake? Or what if they don't understand me? These thoughts create noise in your mind.
I recognize those thoughts. Sometimes I even start translating everything from my native language before I speak.
Many learners do that. Translating word by word can slow you down. Under pressure, it is better to focus on simple ideas instead of perfect sentences.
That sounds easier, but I think many learners feel afraid of making mistakes.
That fear is very natural, but mistakes are part of communication. In fact, many conversations in real life are not perfect. People pause, they correct themselves, and sometimes they use simple words.
That is true. Even in my own language, I sometimes pause when I am thinking.
Exactly. Thinking pauses are normal in every language. If you need a moment, you can say small phrases that give you time. For example, you can say, "Let me think," or "That's a good question."
Oh, that is helpful. Saying something like that gives the brain a moment to organize thoughts.
Yes, and it also shows the other person that you are thinking about their question. Conversation is not a race, it is a process of sharing ideas.
I like that perspective. If I remember that conversations can move slowly, maybe I will feel less pressure.
That is the first step. Understanding what pressure feels like helps you manage it better.
I'm starting to realize that pressure is normal, and learning how to respond to it is part of becoming a better speaker.
Now, let's look a little deeper at why our thinking becomes unclear when we feel pressure. When a person feels stress, the brain moves into a protective mode. It focuses more on safety and less on careful thinking. This is helpful in dangerous situations, but it is not very helpful during a conversation.
That's interesting. So my brain is not trying to make things difficult, it is just reacting to stress.
That's right. Your brain believes something important is happening, so it becomes very alert. The problem is that alertness sometimes pushes away calm thinking.
I think I understand that feeling. When someone suddenly asks me a question in English, my mind rushes. I try to think of the right words very quickly.
And when we rush, we often make things harder for ourselves. Clear thinking usually happens when the mind is calm and organized.
So, pressure makes the mind fast but not organized.
Exactly. The speed increases, but the clarity decreases. Imagine trying to read a book when someone is turning the pages too quickly. You see many words, but you cannot understand the message.
That explanation describes my experience very well. I feel like ideas are moving quickly in my head, but I cannot catch them.
Many learners think they must answer immediately, but in real conversations, it is completely normal to pause for a moment. That small pause can help your brain slow down.
I never thought about that. I always feel like I must answer right away.
Let me give you a helpful phrase. When you need time to think, you can say, "Let me think about that for a moment." This simple sentence gives your mind space to organize ideas.
That is very useful. It sounds natural and polite.
Another helpful phrase is, "That's an interesting question." When you say this, you acknowledge the question and create a short pause to think.
I like that strategy. It feels better than staying silent and looking confused.
Exactly. Silence can sometimes feel uncomfortable in conversation, but small phrases keep the conversation flowing while your mind prepares the answer.
I can imagine using those phrases when someone asks me something unexpected.
And remember, thinking clearly under pressure is not about speaking fast, it's about giving your brain enough time to form a simple and clear idea.
That idea already makes me feel calmer. If I slow down and allow myself to think, the pressure may not feel so strong.
Let's imagine a real situation where pressure appears during an English conversation. Picture this. You are meeting someone new, and they start talking to you in English. Maybe it's a visitor, a coworker, or even a new friend.
I can imagine that situation very clearly. When that happens to me, I immediately start worrying about my English.
That worry is very common. Your mind begins asking many questions. You may think, "What if I don't understand?" Or, "What if I say something wrong?"
Yes, those thoughts appear very quickly. Sometimes I become so focused on my mistakes that I stop listening carefully.
That is an important point. Pressure often pulls our attention away from the conversation. Instead of listening, we start judging ourselves.
I think many learners do that. They listen and think at the same time. Was my grammar correct? Did I pronounce that word properly?
And when the brain is busy judging, it becomes harder to think clearly. One helpful strategy is to focus on understanding first. Good communication begins with listening.
That makes sense. If I focus on the other person's words, I will probably feel less pressure.
Exactly. Listening carefully also gives your brain more time to prepare your response. While the other person is speaking, you can begin organizing your thoughts.
That feels much more natural. Instead of rushing to answer, I can use the time to think.
Yes, conversation is a shared activity. One person speaks, the other listens, and then the roles change. There is always time to think. Before we continue, I'd love to ask everyone listening a question. When you feel pressure while speaking English, what usually happens to you? Do you forget words, speak too fast, or become silent? Write your answer in the comments section and share your experience with us.
That's a great question. I'm curious to hear what other learners experience. For me, the most common problem is forgetting words that I already know.
That is something many learners report. The vocabulary is in your memory, but pressure makes it harder to reach.
Sometimes the word appears in my mind a few seconds later after the conversation moves forward.
Yes, that happens because your brain is calming down again. Once the pressure decreases, the word becomes easier to remember.
That makes me realize something important. Maybe the problem is not my knowledge of English. Maybe the problem is not my knowledge of English. Maybe the real challenge is managing the pressure in the moment.
Now let's talk about a very simple technique that can help you think clearly when you feel pressure. The technique is slowing down your mind and your body.
Slowing down sounds simple, but when I feel nervous, everything inside me feels fast.
That is true for many people. When pressure appears, the body naturally becomes tense and the mind begins to rush. But you can guide your body back to a calm state.
How can someone do that in the middle of a conversation?
One helpful way is through breathing. When you take a slow breath, your body begins to relax. Even one calm breath can make a difference.
That sounds manageable. I don't need to do anything complicated.
Exactly. Imagine someone asks you a question in English. Before answering, take a small breath. It only takes a moment, but it gives your brain time to organize your thoughts.
I like that idea. It feels more natural than trying to answer immediately.
Yes, and remember, a short pause is normal in conversation. Many people pause while they think. It shows that you are considering the question carefully.
I often worry that pauses make me look unprepared.
Not at all. In fact, pauses can make a speaker sound thoughtful. The key is to stay calm during the pause.
That changes how I see the situation. Instead of feeling embarrassed about a pause, I can use it as thinking time.
Exactly. Let me share another helpful phrase. If you need a moment, you can say, "Give me a second to think." This sentence is friendly and natural.
That phrase sounds very useful. It tells the other person that I am thinking about the answer.
Yes, and it also reduces the pressure on your mind. When you give yourself permission to think slowly, your ideas become clearer.
I think many learners rush because they believe they must speak quickly to sound fluent.
That is a common belief, but fluency is not about speed. Fluency is about expressing ideas smoothly and clearly.
So speaking a little slower might actually help me communicate better.
Absolutely. When you slow down, your pronunciation improves, your sentences become clearer, and your thoughts are easier to organize.
I can see how slowing down the body and the mind could make a big difference during a conversation. It turns pressure into a moment to breathe and think.
Let's explore another helpful technique for thinking clearly under pressure. This technique is asking simple questions during the conversation.
Asking questions? I thought the goal was to answer questions correctly.
Answering is important, but questions are also powerful. When you ask a question, you guide the conversation and give your brain more time to think.
That's interesting. I never thought of questions as a way to manage pressure.
Many experienced speakers use this strategy. Imagine someone asks you something complicated and you need a moment to organize your thoughts. You can ask a short question to clarify what they mean.
So instead of rushing to answer, I can slow the conversation by asking something simple.
Exactly. For example, if someone asks you about your work, you could respond with a small question like, "Do you mean my current job?" This helps you understand the question better and gives you time to think.
That sounds very natural. It feels more comfortable than trying to answer immediately.
Another helpful example is when you do not fully understand the question. Instead of feeling embarrassed, you can ask politely for clarification.
What kind of sentence could I use?
A simple phrase is, "Could you explain that again?" Another useful one is, "Can you say that in another way?" These sentences are very common in real conversations.
I like those phrases. They sound polite and clear.
Yes, and they also show that you are interested in understanding the conversation. Communication is not about pretending to understand everything. It is about working together to share ideas.
That makes the situation feel less stressful. If I don't understand something, I can simply ask.
Exactly. Asking questions also keeps the conversation active. Instead of feeling stuck, you become part of the discussion.
I see how this can help under pressure. If my mind feels slow, asking a question can give me a moment to breathe and think.
That's right. Think of questions as small bridges in conversation. They connect ideas and keep communication moving forward.
I like that image. A bridge helps the conversation continue while my brain organizes the next thought.
And remember, simple questions are often the best. You do not need complicated grammar. Clear and polite sentences are enough.
That gives me confidence. I can use questions not only to understand better, but also to reduce pressure during conversations.
Now let's talk about another very helpful idea for thinking clearly under pressure. This idea is simple, but many learners forget it. When you feel pressure, use simple words.
That sounds easy, but I think many learners try to use difficult vocabulary because they want to sound more advanced.
That is true. Many learners believe strong English means using complicated words. But in real conversations, clarity is more important than complexity.
I think I have done that before. Sometimes I try to remember a difficult word, and while I searched for it, the conversation continued without me.
That happens very often. When your brain is under pressure, searching for rare or complicated words makes communication harder.
So it is better to use the words that come to mind first.
Exactly. Simple words are powerful. Imagine you want to say that a movie was excellent, but you cannot remember that word. You can simply say, "The movie was very good."
That still communicates the idea clearly.
Yes, and the goal of communication is sharing meaning. The other person understands your idea, and the conversation continues smoothly.
I like that approach. It removes the pressure to sound perfect.
Let me give you another example. Suppose you want to describe a place that is beautiful, but the word does not come to mind. You could say, "The place looked very nice."
That sentence is simple, but the message is clear.
Exactly. When learners accept simple language, their confidence grows. They focus on ideas instead of worrying about impressive vocabulary.
I can see how that would make speaking easier.
There's another helpful trick. If you forget a word, try describing it instead of stopping completely.
Can you give an example of that?
Of course. Imagine you forget the word calculator. You could say, "It is a small machine that helps you do math."
That's clever. Even without the exact word, the listener can still understand.
Yes, and that keeps the conversation moving. Remember, communication is flexible. There are many ways to express the same idea.
I feel like this removes a lot of pressure. Instead of searching for perfect vocabulary, I can focus on explaining my idea.
That is the mindset of confident speakers. They use the language they know and express their thoughts clearly.
I'm starting to realize that simple language can actually make conversations smoother and more natural.
Let's talk about a real experience now. Stories are helpful because they show how pressure appears in everyday life. Mike, have you ever had a moment when pressure made speaking English difficult?
Yes, I remember one moment very clearly. A few months ago, I attended a small event where people from different countries were meeting and talking. Most of the conversations were in English.
That sounds like an interesting situation. What happened?
At first, I felt comfortable because I was only listening, but after some time, a man started talking to me. He smiled and asked, "So, what brings you here today?"
That's a friendly question, but it can feel surprising if you're not expecting it.
Exactly. I understood the question, but suddenly I felt nervous. My mind started racing. I knew I wanted to explain that I came to meet new people and practice English.
That sounds like a clear idea.
Yes, but in that moment my brain became Nessie. I paused and said something like, "I come here for meeting people and practice English talking."
And how did the other person react?
He smiled and nodded. He said, "That's great. It's a good place to practice." After that, the conversation became easier.
That's a perfect example of what we discussed earlier. Even though the sentence was not perfect, your message was clear.
Yes, and after a few minutes, I felt more relaxed. My sentences became smoother.
That often happens. The first moments of a conversation can feel the most stressful. Once your brain realizes the situation is safe, your thinking becomes clearer.
Looking back, I realized something important. The other person did not care about my grammar. He cared about the conversation.
That is a powerful lesson. Most people are focused on understanding your ideas, not judging every small mistake.
I wish I had remembered that earlier. I would have felt less pressure.
Many learners learn this through experience. Every conversation teaches you that communication is more forgiving than you expect.
That story reminds me that speaking does not need to be perfect to be successful.
Exactly. What matters is your willingness to share your ideas and continue the conversation.
And once the conversation begins, the pressure often becomes smaller.
Now, let's practice a situation together. Imagine you are speaking with someone new and they suddenly ask you a question. This kind of moment can create pressure, but we will walk through it step by step.
That sounds helpful. I'm ready to try.
Good. Let's imagine someone asks you this question. Why are you learning English? Take a moment before answering.
All right. First, I would take a small breath so my mind can slow down.
That's a great start. A calm breath gives your brain time to organize your thoughts. Now you can begin with a simple sentence.
I might say, I'm learning English because I want to communicate with more people.
That is a clear and natural answer. Notice that the sentence is simple, but the idea is strong.
Yes, and it feels easier than trying to create a long explanation.
Exactly. Now imagine the person asks another question. How do you practice English?
If I feel pressure, I could slow down again and think for a moment.
Good strategy. You could also begin with a short phrase like, "Let me think."
Right. Then I could say, I practice by listening to English podcasts and speaking with friends.
That answer communicates your idea very clearly. You used simple vocabulary and a calm structure.
I notice that the more I focus on simple ideas, the easier the conversation feels.
That is the key lesson. Pressure often disappears when we remove the need for perfection.
I also see how small pauses help the brain organize thoughts.
Yes, pausing, breathing, and using simple language are powerful tools. They help you stay calm and focused.
I think many learners would feel more confident if they practiced conversations like this.
Absolutely. Practice helps your brain become familiar with these situations. The more you practice, the less surprising the pressure feels.
That means confidence grows with experience.
Exactly. Every conversation is an opportunity to become more comfortable with the language.
I like this practice approach. It shows that thinking clearly under pressure is a skill that can improve over time.
As we come to the end of our conversation today, let's take a moment to remember the most important ideas we discussed. Pressure is something everyone experiences. It happens during conversations, presentations, interviews, and even simple daily interactions. The first thing to remember is that pressure is a normal reaction. Your body and mind respond to important moments by becoming alert. When this happens, your thoughts may feel fast or disorganized, but this does not mean you cannot communicate well. We also talked about slowing down. A small pause or a calm breath can give your brain the time it needs to organize ideas. Conversation does not need to move quickly. Taking a moment to think can actually make your response clearer. Another helpful strategy is using small phrases when you need more time. Sentences like, "Let me think about that for a moment," or "That's a good question," allow you to pause naturally while preparing your answer. We also explored the power of simple language. You do not need complicated vocabulary to express meaningful ideas. Clear and simple sentences often communicate better than long and complex ones. Asking questions is another useful technique. When you ask someone to clarify or explain something again, you give yourself more time to think while keeping the conversation active. And finally, we learned that real conversations are not perfect. People pause, change their words, and sometimes make small mistakes. What matters most is sharing your thoughts and connecting with others.
Listening to these ideas makes me feel more confident about speaking English. I used to believe that pressure meant I was not ready to communicate. Now I understand that pressure is simply part of the experience. I also learned that I do not need perfect grammar or difficult vocabulary to have a good conversation. If I stay calm, think for a moment, and express my ideas clearly, communication becomes much easier. From now on, when I feel pressure, I will remember to slow down, breathe, and focus on simple ideas instead of trying to sound perfect.